So today we are starting for the new day, that is for the 5th week. Namaskar to all, and a very good evening and good afternoon to all those who are present here. Today we are having a very eminent speakers among us, those who will be covering some of the sessions on the team living tournament on public policy and the session social entrepreneurship. The complete structure will be presently. Firstly, Dr. Rajendra Singh will be taking the sessions on giving the guidelines on how the COVID-19 task force is working since pandemic started and up to now. Then we will move on to Padma. She will be talking about how NRLM and SRLM are working to support the people in and around villages also, and even the urban areas too. And lastly, but not last, I must say, Arpita ji will take up her session on how the diversity engagement and differentiation among the societies and among the NGOs are, and still how NGOs are coping up on those diversity parameters. So not taking much of the time, just I'm giving a prelude of our first speaker, Dr. Rajendra Singh. He has been associated with me since long during public policy meets too. Dr. Rajendra Singh is a public health expert working in the UNICEF actually. And presently he is working in Raipur office as a health officer. Earlier he has worked with UNICEF Delhi office and SAPEGO and WHO too. But he is more inclined toward public policy, public health. He is a public health specialist. Moreover, he is a medical graduate too. So having a 15 years of diverse experience on health system, strengthening the program management, immunization, maternal and child health care, likewise family planning, reproductive health. So these are some of the segments where Dr. Rajendra Singh is working. Apart from this, he also holds various credentials. Like he was a part of MBA from IIM Ahmedabad. Then he was doing a leadership and change management course from IIM Raipur, and also the public policy wherein he has taken up the hands-on project on pollution studies, public health, and he's also an MPhil in health management. And basically, Dr. Rajendra Singh is an innovator, thinker, philosopher, and I must say he's a good writer of the poems too. He keeps on interacting us, he keeps on enlightening us by his Hindi poems, which basically no one is actually coming up with those things, that how he's supporting others. During pandemic also, he has been supporting to us with his poems. He's a very influential thinker and very strategic planning. He has been doing since he's been associated with WHO and then other UNESCO bodies and UNICEF bodies. He contributes a lot in developing, implementing, and coordinating various evidence-based projects. And on the contextual specific, he is looking out for all the low-cost solutions for the health management and also the sustainable health management. So likewise, he is strengthening the system of health across India, across globe, by his support, by his thoughts, by his penning down all those contributions. So nothing much to say. He's here with us. Best we should listen with him, from him to him. So over to you, Rajendra Ji. I'm not taking much of the time. Today, floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Pradeep जी. हमारे पास कितना टाइम है?
You have somewhere around 40 minutes का कवर करिएगा, जिसमें 20 मिनट्स आप कह सकते हैं, मैं कहूँगा कि पीपीटी करिए और 20 मिनट्स में ज्यादा इंटरेक्टिव करने की कोशिश करिए, ज्यादा अच्छा रहेगा. ठीक है. You are on mute, I feel.
No mute.
Yeah. Now I can hear you. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, so I'll keep a track of time. So the first thing is today I have no PPT because COVID task force एक ऐसी चीज है जिसमें कुछ ऐसा कोई ये set precedence नहीं है कि बहुत बरसों से नहीं बन रही है, तो इसका कोई set PPT भी नहीं है. So I'll go through I'll interact through the questions and conversation, and जो basic concepts हैं वो मैं बताने की कोशिश करता हूँ. तो पहली चीज ये है कि टास्क, हम अक्सर 2-3 वर्ड सुनते हैं. एक हम वर्ड सुनते हैं टीम, एक सुनते हैं ग्रुप, एक सुनते हैं कमिटी, और एक होता है टास्क फोर्स. राइट, ये आप डिफरेंट प्रोग्राम्स में ये 4 शब्द सुनते होंगे. अगर इसमें कोई ऐसा है जिसको हिंदी नहीं समझ में आ रहे हो तो आप मुझे चैट में बता दीजिए. आई विल कम टू द इंग्लिश. अदरवाइज मुझे लगता है हिंदी इज बेटर, तो मिक्स इज बेटर. तो टीम, ग्रुप और कमिटी और आपका जो ये जो टास्क फोर्स है। तो इसमें हम ये अक्सर ये शब्द डिफरेंट डिफरेंट प्रोग्राम्स में, डिफरेंट एक्टिविटीज में सुनते रहते हैं। तो इनका थोड़ा बेसिक अंतर हम पहले समझ लेते हैं, क्योंकि उसी से आपको आइडिया हो जाएगा इन फ्यूचर भी, अपार्ट फ्रॉम कोविड भी, कि ये इनका क्या रोल है। सो ग्रुप इज अ सॉर्ट ऑफ इनफॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर, राइट। जैसे हम क्लास में कोई असाइनमेंट करते हैं तो हमने ग्रुप बना दिया, ग्रुप 1, ग्रुप 2, ग्रुप 3, समथिंग लाइक दैट। इट्स अ इनफॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर डिजाइन टू कंप्लीट अ डेजिग्नेटेड टास्क, राइट। उसके कंपोनेंट जो उसके जो पार्टिसिपेंट होते हैं वो किसी भी बेसिस पे डिफाइन किए जा सकते हैं, बट उनका पर्पस एक ही होता है। वो पर्पस है आपका आपका व्हाट यू मीन टू से कि एक एक डेजिग्नेटेड असाइनमेंट है, उसको हमको पूरा करना है। और उनके बीच में ये नॉर्मली सिमिलरिटी होती है। सो बेसिकली जो 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 आपके ग्रुप के पार्टिसिपेंट है वो होमोजेनियस होते हैं, यानी कि उनमें सब में बहुत सारी चीजें डिफरेंट होंगी, लेकिन एक चीज कॉमन होगी। सो फॉर एग्जांपल ग्रुप है, तो ग्रुप में हमारा एक चीज, जैसे हम क्लास के अंदर ग्रुप बना रहे हैं तो एक चीज उनके अंदर कॉमन है कि वो सारे इसी क्लास के स्टूडेंट्स, समथिंग लाइक दैट। ठीक है, ये एक 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 रफ सी डेफिनेशन है ये, मतलब आप इसको श्योर शॉर्ट डेफिनेशन नहीं कह सकते, इसलिए क्योंकि ग्रुप कई तरीके से बनते हैं। दूसरा, जब हम गवर्नमेंट के प्रोजेक्ट्स में काम करते हैं या गवर्नमेंट मशीनरी में काम करते हैं, तो एक दूसरा टर्म हमको सुनाई देता है वर्किंग ग्रुप। सो वर्किंग ग्रुप का मतलब क्या होता है कि वही वो भी ग्रुप है, लेकिन इसमें हम डिफरेंट डिफरेंट स्टेक होल्डर्स को, डिफरेंट लोगों को एक साथ रखते हैं और उनको इनफॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर में काम करने को देते हैं। और इनफॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर का मतलब है कि हमने उनको कह दिया कि आप 100 लोग मीटिंग में आए तो आपका ये 10 लोगों का एक वर्किंग ग्रुप है, राइट। ये 10 लोगों का वर्किंग ग्रुप है। इट मींस ये 10 लोग बाकी 90 लोगों के रिप्रेजेंटेशन में एक तरह से काम करेंगे, उनके बिहाफ पे काम करेंगे। और वो जो वर्किंग ग्रुप होगा वो एक पर्टिकुलर किसी चीज पे वर्क कर रहा होगा। तो ग्रुप और वर्किंग ग्रुप इट्स सेम थिंग, बट ग्रुप थोड़ा सा क्या एक लूज डेफिनेशन है जो अदर टर्म्स मतलब पॉलिटिकल, सोशल, डेली लाइफ में भी यूज होता है। वर्किंग ग्रुप जो होता है थोड़ा प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में यूज होने वाला टर्म है, और मोर और लेस उसका एक टाइम पीरियड होता है कि इतने समय तक आपको ये वर्क करके कंप्लीट करने का है। जब हम वर्किंग ग्रुप को एक और फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर में विद प्रॉपर एक लेटर इशू कर देते हैं या एक आदेश जारी कर देते हैं या उसको एक फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर दे देते हैं, देन इट बिकम्स कमिटी। तो कमिटी क्या होती है? कमिटी वही सारे लोगों का एक समूह होती है जिसके एक निश्चित टारगेट है, निश्चित तरीका है। लेकिन कमिटी में एक और चीज का अंतर आ जाता है कि कमिटी का कोई टाइम पीरियड नहीं होता। ऐसा नहीं है कि ये कमिटी 6 महीने के लिए ही, अनलेस अनटिल उसमें डिफाइन ना किया जाए। तो अक्सर आपने देखा होगा कि जैसे मैं आपको रियल लाइफ एग्जांपल देता हूँ कि रामलीला कमेटी, राइट। एक रामलीला कमेटी आप सुनते हैं, मोहल्ला कमेटी सुनते हैं, एक जो कहीं मेला लगा तो मेला कमेटी हो गई, या फिर आपका कोई फंक्शन हो रहा है उसके लिए कमिटीज बन गई। ये कमिटी हम लूज लाइफ में सुनते हैं, बट प्रोफेशनल लाइफ में कमिटी वर्ड जो है वो फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर्ड है। स्ट्रक्चर किस चीज के लिए? ताकि आप कोई काम को सिमिलर एक टाइम पीरियड में करेंगे और उसमें अकाउंटेबिलिटी फिक्स हो गई। ग्रुप में क्या है, अकाउंटेबिलिटी नहीं है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल आज हम कितने लोग हैं? 44 लोग हैं, हमने 44 हैं, हमने 10-10 का ग्रुप बना दिया। अब इसमें से 2 लोग चले गए तो हम उनको ट्रैक नहीं कर पाएंगे। बट कमिटी में ऐसा नहीं होता। कमिटी इट्स फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर। तो उसमें जिन लोगों का नाम है, अगर आप गवर्नमेंट स्ट्रक्चर्स में या प्रोफेशनल में वो यूज होता है, अगर उसमें वो लोग रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं करते हैं या उसमें पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करते हैं, तो समटाइम्स द एक्शन इज आल्सो टेकन इन दैट। नाउ द मोर फॉर्मल स्ट्रक्चर द टास्क फोर्स। तो कमिटी जो है वो गवर्नमेंट में यूज होने वाला एक रेगुलर टर्म है, वो इमरजेंसीज इस तरह से यूज नहीं होता। अब आते हैं हम सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म टास्क फोर्स। टास्क फोर्स कब बनता है? तो टास्क फोर्स तब बनता है जब गवर्नमेंट में 3 चीजें, मतलब 3 कंडीशंस में बनाते हैं गवर्नमेंट में टास्क फोर्स। एक, जब इंटर डिपार्टमेंटल कोऑर्डिनेशन बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी हो, राइट। मतलब जब बहुत ज्यादा कोऑर्डिनेशन की जरूरत हो। तो फॉर एग्जांपल हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट का कोई इंटरनल काम है तो उसके लिए टास्क फोर्स नहीं बनेगी, कभी नहीं बनता। काम कब बनेगा? जब हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट का काम दूसरे डिपार्टमेंट के साथ मिलकर होना हो। जैसे पंचायती राज है, DWCD है, मे बी हाईवेज है, मे बी डिफेंस है, मे बी आपका फॉर एग्जांपल एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट है, उनके साथ मिलकर काम करना हो। क्यों? क्योंकि टास्क फोर्स का मतलब है कि हम एक टास्क ले रहे हैं और उसमें हम फोर्स से काम करेंगे। तो अगर फोर्स से काम करना है तो आपको बहुत सारी चीजें डिसाइड करनी पड़ेंगी। एक एक पूरे टास्क फोर्स का एक गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल होगा, एक गाइडर, एक कोई गाइड होगा, मेंटर होगा, पूरा डिसाइड करेगा जो। दूसरा क्या है कि टास्क फोर्स की बड़ी अकाउंटेबिलिटी डिजाइन होगी। तीसरा, टास्क फोर्स का जो फीचर होता है कि उसमें वेरिएबिलिटी होगी, एक ही टाइप के लोग नहीं होंगे। मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि अगर हम टास्क फोर्स कोविड का बना रहे हैं तो केवल उसमें हेल्थ के लोग होंगे, नहीं, सारे लोग होंगे। क्योंकि टास्क फोर्स का मतलब ये है कि वो तब बनाई जाएगी जब कोऑर्डिनेशन चाहिए। दूसरा टास्क फोर्स हम का दूसरी कंडीशन कब होती है, टास्क फोर्स कब बनाते हैं, जब हमको ये क्या कहते हैं, इमरजेंसी कंडीशन है, मतलब किसी चीज में बहुत फोर्स की जरूरत है, बहुत इमरजेंसी है। तो पोलियो के टाइम पे ये टास्क फोर्स का कॉन्सेप्ट इंडिया में, मतलब उससे भी पहले शुरू हुआ, लेकिन पोलियो में ये ज्यादा थोड़ा प्रचलित हो गया। इससे पहले आप अभी भी कोई भी होता है टास्क फोर्स, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल कभी कोई साइक्लोन आ जाए कहीं सडनली, वहां एक टास्क फोर्स बन जाएगा, राइट। कभी कोई सडन इमरजेंसी हो जाएगी, वहां टास्क फोर्स बनेगा। तो टास्क फोर्स का मतलब ये कि इमरजेंसी है कहीं ना कहीं, राइट। दूसरा फीचर हो गया कोऑर्डिनेशन। और तीसरा फीचर हो गया कि टास्क फोर्स का मतलब है कि वो जो टास्क फोर्स है वो हाईएस्ट अकाउंटेबिलिटी, हाईएस्ट पावर और हाईएस्ट कोऑर्डिनेशन के साथ काम करेगी। यानी कि टास्क फोर्स का काम है पूरी हर चीज की, मतलब एक सुप्रीम अथॉरिटी होना। तो टास्क फोर्स विदाउट पावर इज समथिंग नो यूज, राइट। तो ये तीन चीजों के साथ टास्क फोर्स का कॉन्सेप्ट, मतलब मैं आपको बताना चाह रहा था। अब एक सेकंड आप होल्ड करिए, मैं आपको एक स्ट्रक्चर दिखाता हूं, राइट। इसको हम कैसे दिखा सकते हैं, ये शेयर स्क्रीन, ये आपको स्क्रीन दिख रहा होगा, ठीक है। एक मैंने एग्जांपल लिया है, डिस्ट्रिक्ट टास्क फोर्स है, असम डिपार्टमेंट ने ये नोटिफिकेशन निकाला है। अब आप इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, गवर्नमेंट ऑफ आसाम है, नोटिफिकेशन है। नोटिफिकेशन का मतलब है ये पब्लिक डोमेन में भी ये बात गई है, गवर्नमेंट डोमेन में भी गई है, राइट। और ये ऑफिशियल है। क्यों, कैसे ऑफिशियल है, इसको लीगलाइज कैसे किया गया, क्योंकि ये पब्लिक पॉलिसी का प्लेटफॉर्म है, तो आप इस सारे एस्पेक्ट्स को देखिए। इसको लीगलाइज कैसे किया गया है, नंबर, उसको एक नंबर दिया गया करेस्पॉन्डेंस का, इन एक्सरसाइज ऑफ द पावर कन्फर्ड अंडर सेक्शन 2 ऑफ दिस एक्ट। मतलब कोई उसको लीगल फॉर्म भी दिया गया, ऐसे नहीं कि मतलब ऐसे ही मैं आपको नहीं बना रहा हूं, आई हैव अ पावर टू डेजिग्नेट सम अथॉरिटी टू सम वर्क टू यू। Government of Assam is pleased to notify the district level task force to implement all provisions of the Assam COVID-19 regulation 2020 and any other regulation which may be notified। तो मतलब ये तो पावर है ही है कोविड रेगुलेशन, उसके अलावा अगर कोई जरूरत पड़ेगी तो कंट्रोल और कंटेनमेंट के लिए जो भी जरूरत होगी उसके लिए हम आपको दोबारा भी इंक्लूड कर सकते हैं, समथिंग लाइक दैट, अंडर अलोंग विद द रिलेवेंट सेक्शन ऑफ डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एक्ट। तो 3 एक्ट इसमें इंक्लूड हो गए, राइट। एक ये एक्ट 1997, एक कोविड रेगुलेशन 2020 और एक डिजास्टर मैनेजमेंट एक्ट 2005। तो ये 3 एक्ट से तो वो हो गया लीगलाइज। अब डेजिग्नेशन, तो आप ये देखो कि ये गवर्नमेंट का है, हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट का नहीं है, इंपॉर्टेंट आपको ये समझना होगा। तो हमने जो बात कही कि इसमें एक तो कोऑर्डिनेशन का काम है, तो कोऑर्डिनेशन के लिए आप डिपार्टमेंट्स पढ़ना, अभी हम पढ़ेंगे। दूसरा इमरजेंसी कोविड है, और तीसरा इसकी पावर जो अथॉरिटी है वो कैसे है। तो अथॉरिटी आप देखिए, डिप्टी कमिश्नर, एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेवल पे डिप्टी कमिश्नर इज समवन हायर, राइट। ऐसा ही स्टेट का भी टीओआर होता है, उसको मैं ढूंढ रहा था बट वो समय पे मिला नहीं, बट इट्स ओके, उस अथॉरिटी समझ में आ जाएगी। सो डिप्टी कमिश्नर, चेयरपर्सन जिला परिषद, सुपरिटेंडेंट ऑफ पुलिस। अब नाउ ये हो गया एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, 1 और 2 एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन है, पुलिस हो गया आपका पुलिस यानी कि आपका लॉ एंड ऑर्डर। एडिशनल डिप्टी कमिश्नर इन चार्ज ऑफ हेल्थ, ये हो गया हेल्थ। रेवेन्यू एंड डिजास्टर, जॉइंट डायरेक्टर हेल्थ सर्विस, मेंबर सेक्रेटरी। अब किसी भी जो कमिटी होती है उसमें 2 इंपॉर्टेंट आदमी होते हैं हमेशा, एक चेयरमैन और एक सेक्रेटरी, राइट। तो चेयरमैन और सेक्रेटरी की सबसे ज्यादा अकाउंटेबिलिटी होती है। तो इनमें चेयरमैन का, डिप्टी कमिश्नर का रोल क्या हो गया कि ही हैज द हाईएस्ट पावर टू डेजिग्नेट and to give authority to give work to any of these। इसका ये भी मतलब हुआ कि फॉर एग्जांपल आप इसमें से कोई भी आदमी पकड़ लो, लेट्स से डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेबर ऑफिसर, ये जो नंबर 14 पे लिखा है, अभी ये कल को इसको अगर डिप्टी कमिश्नर यहाँ पर हैं, राइट, अगर वो इसको कोई काम देंगे तो ये मना नहीं कर सकता, ये नहीं कह सकता कि सर आप मेरे सुपरवाइजर नहीं है मैं नहीं करूंगा, ऐसा नहीं है। यहाँ पर अगर आप इस कमिटी में हो तो आपको वो काम करना होगा, दैट इज हाउ इट वर्क्स, राइट। तो इसमें आप देखोगे डीआरडीए, चीफ मेडिकल ऑफिसर, डीडीएमए, एलिमेंट्री एजुकेशन ऑफिसर्स और डिफरेंट डिपार्टमेंट से जो कि कोविड रिस्पॉन्स में काम आ सकते हैं। मोर देन दैट एनी अदर ऑफिशियल को ऑप्टेड बाय द डिप्टी कमिश्नर, मींस यहां तक के अलावा भी यदि कोई अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो उनको भी गवर्नमेंट इंक्लूड कर सकती है, दैट इज द पावर। The above district level task force shall implement all provision of the Assam COVID regulation 2020 and any other regulation which may be notified by the government of Assam in relation to control। मतलब इनको पूरा, और इसको कौन कर रहा है, जारी कौन कर रहा है, कमिश्नर एंड सेक्रेटरी टू द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ आसाम, हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर डिपार्टमेंट, यानी कि हाईएस्ट लेवल से ये डेजिग्नेट हो रहा है। तो ये और इन सारे लोगों को कॉपी, तो बेसिकली जो पर्पस था मेरा आपको बताने का वो ये था कि इसमें हम हाईएस्ट अथॉरिटी से काम करते हैं तो कोविड टास्क फोर्स में, राइट। अब कोविड टास्क फोर्स जो इन्होंने बना लिया कि ये लोग होंगे, राइट। तो ये लोग काम क्या करेंगे, इनके एक्चुअली काम क्या क्या होंगे, राइट। तो इनकी सबसे पहला जो काम होता है वो कि कोई भी टास्क फोर्स, हम टास्क फोर्स का जनरल एग्जांपल ले रहे हैं बट कोविड में आप उससे खुद ही कोरिलेट कर सकते हैं। सबसे पहला काम है टीम बनाना, राइट। टीम बनाने का मतलब है कि सारे लोग जो भी कोई भी टास्क फोर्स में है तो वो एक टीम की तरह काम करें। उसमें कोई आदमी ये नहीं कह सकता कि मैं इस डिपार्टमेंट का हूँ, ये तो मेरा काम नहीं है, या इसमें हमारा क्या काम। अगर वो आपका काम है, आपको दिया गया, आप वो बताइए। अगर आपको कोई दिक्कत है उसकी इंप्लीमेंटेशन में, तो इट इज रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ द चेयरमैन ऑफ द टास्क फोर्स टू सॉल्व दैट इशू, राइट, और योर कंसर्न डिपार्टमेंट, राइट। तो ये हो गया। देन फर्स्ट वर्क इज द बिल्डिंग द टीम। देन उस बिल्डिंग द टीम में क्या है कि सबके काम बांटना, पहला काम। दूसरा है कि एक ऑप्टिमल रेंज फॉर, मतलब उसके लिए कि, अच्छा दूसरा एक और, सॉरी एक फीचर में भूल गया, कि टास्क फोर्स का मतलब ऐसा नहीं कि ये बहुत बड़ा ग्रुप होता है, लिमिटेड नंबर ऑफ पीपल होते हैं, सो दैट उसमें सबकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी फिक्स की जाए। क्योंकि और आप एक चीज अभी आपने शायद मिस कर दी, हमने डिस्कस करना, हर डिपार्टमेंट से केवल एक ही आदमी रखा गया है। तो वो आदमी, जैसे फॉर डिस्ट्रिक्ट लेबर ऑफिसर, तो लेबर डिपार्टमेंट से जो भी रिलेटेड काम होगा वो उस आदमी की जिम्मेदारी है। अब वो अपने इंटरनली, यानी इंटरनली मतलब लेबर डिपार्टमेंट में उसको कैसे करवाता है, दैट इज हिज हेडेक, दैट्स इट, राइट। So first task is the building the team, then managing the task, then मतलब managing the task in the sense कि जो भी टास्क फोर्स जिस काम के लिए बनी है उस काम को मैनेज करना। फिर तीसरा उनका काम रहता है प्रिंसिपली, वो है मैनेजिंग द रिसोर्सेज। भाई अगर आप कोई काम करेंगे तो आपको रिसोर्सेज को भी मैनेज करना पड़ेगा, राइट। तो जब आप रिसोर्सेज को मैनेज नहीं करेंगे तो आपको ये कैसे पता चलेगा कि आप क्या चीज अचीव कर रहे हैं, क्या चीज नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। Okay, somebody has written English. Okay, so the another important responsibility is the managing the resources, because if we want to address a situation, especially emergency situation, you need to take care of the resources, right? And fourth important part is communicating the results, yeah, communicating the outcomes, because if any meeting, if any group is decided is formed for a particular purpose, then its strength and the purpose and the activity should be communicated well in the time to the public domain also, to the media also, and to the members also. So if district labor officer, for example, we have taken, so if district labor officer in one meeting, if a task is assigned to the district labor officer, you need to take care of the all migrants coming from Maharashtra border, right? So then district labor officer will update in the next meeting of the task force that what action I have taken, and this is for the information of the to the information to the chairman as well as all other members, and maybe to the media if necessary, right? Another important feature or another important task for the task force is once the task is done, then the wrap up also. So task force is not a standard thing, or what you can say stable thing. Once the emergency finish, then the task force can be wrapped up. Then who will wrap up the task force? Whomsoever is designated the order. तो हमने अभी देखा कि यहाँ पर किसने दिया, सेक्रेटरी हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर has given that letter. So maybe once the COVID will finish, then they maybe dismantle that. So dismantle means that they will again issue an order. Important part is that in government communication, we need to understand the fact that everything comes in written. So even forming a structure, even dismantling a structure. Now you will say that why it is important? Why it is important to dismantle a structure? ये तो कोई structure है ही नहीं ना. ये तो कोई it is not like an office. Everybody is called for a meeting on a regular basis. That's it. And they may be attending the meeting from their respective office through online also. So what is dismantling this? Why dismantling is important? Because dismantling through the written communication of dismantling is important because it indicates that government has acknowledged that this emergency is over. So dismantling is very important. So even it's a very small step. Government takes that step. So I am very sure sometimes if you follow the communication or if you follow the news, maybe at a later stage, or you may look at some government website for the previous emergencies. You can find out. Now what happens in certain cases, like if you look at Odisha. In Odisha, what is the common thing that they normally faces the cyclone, right? So cyclone in Bihar, the Kosi floods are a very common thing, right? In Northeast, the landslides or maybe the other emergencies are a common thing. In that cases, the government normally what you can say, keep the structure intact. They normally don't dismantle the structure. So एक बार task force बन गया, it will be there for always, right? Another feature which we have not seen or which we have not discussed is here the designation is written, not the person name. So if the district labor officer is changed, another district labor officer will represent the meeting. That's it. So that is how the district this task force is the task force concept works. Now, why the another thing is, just a second, I'll show you another thing. Wait, I'll try to show another. Wait. I was looking to a government letter. Vaccination guideline. So when the this implementation of national, right? Let me see this. So when this vaccination program was launched, at that time task force was also done. I'm trying to look at that that guideline. I'm not getting it, but anyways, I can talk about it randomly also. So at that time also the task force was designed, and the same way this task force was having this feature of the same designating the work, then addressing the queries of the people, then addressing the technical part, non-technical part, and that is how it works. So in task force, the structure is like this. Now, what is so special in COVID task force? So COVID is a very good example of, let me just try once if I can get it. The operational guideline. This is FAQ. This is distribution. I want to show you that guideline. This will give you an example. Order letter. I think this is the guideline. Yes. Just a second. Minimize. Okay, task force. I just want to show you the. Yes. So where's the show screen? Share screen. This one. So when this vaccination program was launched, this is the operational guideline launched in January, right? It was formed on 28th December. So this was the first structure. So the point is here that even at that time, when the vaccination program was launched, these many points were considered at that time in January. So the one important aspect which we need to discuss here is this multi-level governance mechanism, because this is important. So how the vaccination program will go in future, what will be the hurdles, what will be the issues, what will be the questions, what will be the concern, that is a dynamic thing. But what we have to decide right now, the people have the thought at that time, this is the governance mechanism. We can decide it right now. So based on that, they have decided the governance mechanism, that how it will work. Now it was decided with the idea that it will stay like this only, but later on with time it can be changed also. So we will look at this governance mechanism for the COVID vaccination itself. It is for vaccination only. For the COVID response, the COVID task force were having different mechanisms, little bit different mechanisms. I was trying to find the right. Okay. So at the national level, this is the one is National Expert Group on Vaccine Administration for COVID. That's NAGVAC. It decides that what vaccine to be taken, which vaccine to be taken, what should be the gap, something like that. So you must have heard this name NAGVAC earlier also. At the state level, we work at the state level. So this is one state steering committee, right? So state steering committee, now everything is decided here. Because it's a COVID is a national thing, it's not a state level thing. So from the national level, it is already decided and communicated to the district, to the states, that what is to be taken, how it is to be formed. So a state steering committee would be the chairperson, chief secretary of the state, convener, principal secretary, health, right? So convener is almost the secretary, the member secretary. These would be the members. These would be the development partners of the agencies. Frequency at least a month. Additional meetings may be held if required. Right? At least once in a month, at least. Although in starting, people were meeting every week or maybe twice a week also in starting. Now, what are the activities? So now this is at the state level. So state level, what are the activities for the state level task force? Preparatory phase, these many things you will do. Implementation phase means upon the availability of a vaccine, what you will do, right? Then state task force the immunization. Now this is steering committee. So steering committees means the guiding committee. Yeah, right. Guiding committee. it guides that how the vaccination should go. So it's actually the state task force. This is the state task force, but what they have done here, they have given two names. One is the steering committee, is sort of guiding committee, and this is the task force which actually do the things. So who are the members here? If you find, the members are little bit same, but here the authority is more in the steering committee. Why? Because it is headed by mainly by the chief secretary and the principal secretary, as well as the other type of representative, because here the coordination from the government departments may not be needed at the daily level, but in immunization, for the daily issues, you need different type of stakeholders. So here state task force of immunization is given. So who are the members? Chairperson. Now here the chairperson is additional chief secretary, and you see at least once every fortnight. So what does that mean? That this task force has to meet frequently, and they have to take regular actions and regular decisions, right? This is member secretary, state immunization officer. This is the most important person for the vaccination. So he is the secretary, he is the convener, he is the decision maker. Now they have also decided activities to be conducted, preparatory phase, then implementation phase. We are not reading this. Then there should be a control room. So it's a special thing for the emergency that they set up a control room for addressing each and every type of query regarding vaccine, regarding if this, then if that, maybe logistic, maybe supply, maybe other emergencies. Now at the district level task force. So the example which we have seen just now is the district level task force, right? So usme district magistrate is the chairperson. In Assam, it may be the commissioner. They call it as a commissioner there. For the district magistrate means the district head. So that is why they have named district commissioner, this commissioner. So here, this is district magistrate, then DIO, then CMO, then other departments, right? And these are they are meeting weekly, right? Activities for them, monitor progress of the database, ensure in training, monitor progress, planning, training, planning, identify, mapping, implementation phase. Now look at the role, that how they will what is their role with the other departments. I mean to say, see, this first part, this is a department, this is a responsibility of health department. Second, health department. Third, health department. Fourth, health department. Fifth, involve other relevant departments, including ICDS, PRI, urban local bodies, central ministry, institution, and key immunization partners such as UNDP, UNICEF. So this is their role, to involve other departments, right? Ye departments, they can also voluntarily participate in that, as well as they can also, the committee can also ask them to contribute, right? Same way, implementation phase, when the implementation phase will be there, then the partners or the stakeholders will be having different responsibility. What are those responsibilities? So these are some responsibilities. ठीक है, ये हो गया. फिर ऐसे ही एक urban task force है, ठीक? Then a district control room, then a block task force. They have to meet more than that. Then a block control room, and this is the governance mechanism. So that is how it happens, right? So just stop here. So I think Pradeep ji, for the presentation part, this much is enough, because as such as I have no presentation for the COVID task force. I think the more of the things we can take in the questions, if there are any. Either we can take questions.
Because you have covered the segmentation of how exactly the task force is working, what it can be the purpose of the task force, how it is going for the implementation, and what are the jurisdiction for the state steering committees and principal secretaries and secretaries. And that is more than enough actually to understand about the task force for the initial understanding. Students, if you have any questions, please let us know what you would like to understand for that. If you write on the chat box, that will also do. Or you can unmute yourself and then can very well speak to our honorable speaker. Okay, I request IT team to actually present a certificate of gratitude. Thanks Galinder ji for coming here, enlightening our students how exactly the COVID-19 task force is working, and you have covered the forward of that particular task force, that is immunization, which country is actually covering up the mass population of country, that is 130 crore of the people. It was really enriching session. Thanks for that.
And I keep on posting what exactly are coming through from our students by way of mail. So thank you for that. Thanks for taking your time. Thanks for devoting your time. Because I do understand you are busy and you do have this thing, one of the meeting with principal secretary and secretary just before this meeting. Thank you. Thanks for this. Thanks for supporting us always.
Yeah, so Pradeep ji, namaskar. So I'm here. Because that session is ended, so I'm just with you. So if anybody has a question, they can post in the chat box. We can discuss it later. Also, I'm here. Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. Radhika, you can proceed to next meet and read out the intro of our second speaker so that madam can start.
Okay, sure, sir. Ms. Padma Kumari is a freelance consultant who has done Masters in Social Work from Kashi Vidyapeeth, Varanasi, and Project Management from Xavier School of Management, Jamshedpur. A silver medalist in MSW with 18 plus years of experience working with national and international NGOs like CARE, UNICEF, FPAI, a Packard Foundation Fellow, and having specialization in SHHR and adolescent health. She presented papers on her work on MHTH, MSM, transgender and Hijra community in international conferences like Asia Pacific Conference on Reproductive Sexual Health and Rights in Philippines. She supported many NGOs to get funds and projects under skill development programs.
Okay. Yeah. I think, thanks, Radhika. Thanks for your intro. Padma Madam, you can take the session. You can go ahead and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. और आज का जो सेशन आपने मुझे दिया है प्रदीप जी, थैंक यू फॉर कॉलिंग आई से फॉर दिस सेशन. एंड जो मेरा सेशन आपने दिया है दैट इज NRLM एंड SRLM, दैट इज स्टेट रूरल लाइवलीहुड मिशन एंड द नेशनल रूरल लाइवलीहुड मिशन. So I'm very happy to be a part of your program. और मैंने आज एक presentation in the sense कि it's a huge mission. This is NRLM is a huge thing. So to conclude everything in 40 minutes or half an hour is like I have to like go through only the salient features what are there in the NRLM and SRLM. So I'll share a little bit presentation और एक communicate like it will be if it's better अगर हमारे students भी हमारे साथ two-way communication करे. Otherwise, I will just try to read out the most of the salient features of that those NRLM and what is in it. So I think I will start by sharing my screen. I think, am I allowed to share the screen? I'm not able to see my screen.
Let me check.
Yes.
Yeah, I think now you can do.
Okay, I just try.
Are you able to, ma'am?
It's not coming actually. My screen is not coming.
Okay,
I'm able to see.
Do one thing. Radhika, do one thing. Just go on the share option and click on the allow to multiple participants.
Sir, could you please repeat?
Or I will read out my thing.
Radhika, you just allow her to. Wait a while. Yeah, Radhika, you can do this thing. Just go to the share option. Click on the multiple participants option.
Sir, there is no option right now. Like only it is visible in my screen.
Are you getting?
Sir, in the share screen option, there is no multiple partners option.
Did you click that one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so madam, you can do.
Yeah, I'll just try to read out, no issue. Okay, I'll just read out my this presentation. कोई बात नहीं. So to start with, what is NRLM or the National Rural Livelihood Mission, जिसे हम आजीविका भी कहते हैं. So National Rural Livelihood Mission is which is also known as Ajivika, was launched by the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India in June 2011 as a restructured version of Swarn Jayanti Gram Swaraj Yojana, which was known as SGSY. Or NRLM has the mandate of reaching out to almost 10 crore of rural poor in 6 lakh villages across the country. And it believes in the guiding principle, uske hisab se all poor have innate capabilities to overcome the poverty. And NRLM strives towards unleashing this entrepreneurial capability by creating appropriate platforms for the poor through a dedicated and sensitive supportive structures. So this is basic introduction about the NRLM and the key features of NRLM. What are the key features based on which this NRLM is based upon? The number one is universal social mobilization. The second one is the inclusion, financial inclusion basically. And the third one is the livelihoods enhancement. It works towards bringing at least one member, preferably a woman, from all poor families into the self-help group network. The self-help groups and their federation offer their members service such as savings, credit, and livelihood support. As the institution of poor, they mature, they are facilitated to take up the livelihoods and other income generation activities. So what is the implementation plan of this NRLM or the National Rural Livelihood Mission? The NRLM has put in place a dedicated, sensitive and supportive structure to facilitate the creation and functioning of IOPs. The SRLMs, that is known as the State Rural Livelihood Missions, are given the responsibility of implementing this program in the states based on the state's perspective implementation plan, also known as SPIPs, and the annual action plan, also known as AAPs. The District Mission Management Unit, or the DMMU, and the Block Mission Management Unit, also known as BMMU, are established to implement this program. At the national level, the National Rural Livelihoods Promotion Society, or the NRLPS, has been set up to serve as the technical support agency to this NRLM. The State Rural Livelihood, the SRLPS, that is State Rural Livelihood Management Promotion Societies, we call it, support the SRLM in strategizing, planning, and implementing this NRLM in the states. Now we come to who are the eligible. Who are the people who are eligible for the benefits under this NRLM? The NRLM targets household, that is also known as NTH, which is the smallest unit, are identified through the participatory identification of poor instead of the BPL. Earlier, what happened in the government programs, basically most of the times, the people who used to fall in this BPL category were just taken into any other government's program. But for the NRL implementation, this time they had identified the poor people through the participatory identification process known as the PIP, in which the CBOs or the community-based organizations, they themselves identify the people who are poor in their village through the participatory tool. And then the listed poor who has already been identified with this community-based organization is vetted by the Gram Sabha, and then they become eligible to be enrolled under this program of NRLM. Now, what are when we talked about these IOPs or the institutions of poor, how they are selected and how this is different from the BPL family who were already earlier a part of this governments, all sorts of government programs. The self-help groups, their federations at the village and the cluster levels and beyond other levels like block level or the district level, and other collectives of the poor constitute institutions of poor, that is, they are known as IOPs. Self-help groups are an affinity-based homogeneous group of 10 to 20 members, and most of them are usually women. They follow 5 cardinal principles of Panch Sutra. That is, they conduct regular meetings, they conduct regular savings, they have internal lending in place, they do regular repayment and bookkeeping. Apart from this, in case of special self-help groups, that is groups in remote tribal areas and in difficult areas or the hard to reach areas, groups with vulnerable persons like disabled person, the group may be as small as 5 members. Only for groups to be formed with persons with disabilities and other special categories like elders, transgender, NRLM will have both men and women in the self-help groups. Otherwise, it is mostly women only. Now, again the question, why is only NRLM, it only for women or other participants can also participate? But it is mostly NRLM priority is to reach out to the poorest, most vulnerable and the marginalized community. It begins with targeting women and they are considered as representatives of their households. In case of extremely vulnerable persons like persons with disabilities or the elders, etc., NRLM mobilizes both men and women. Further, other interventions of NRLM like rural self-employment training institutes, Ajivika skills would reach out to other poor in the general category. Now, how partners taken aboard the NRLM? Because NRLM cannot function solely, they have to aboard a few partners to implement this plan at the grassroots level. So how the partners taken aboard in the NRLM? The NRLM works with variety of organizations for various purposes. It has identified the state rural livelihood missions like known as SRLMs of certain states and NROs for implementation and the support. NRLM has also forged partnership with capacity building agencies known as CBAs and academic and management institutes to meet its capacity building and technical assistance needs. It has also entered into partnership with community-based organizations and the NGOs to implement the program in certain blocks of the community. The NRLPS identifies and empanels these organizations while the SRLMs or the state rural livelihood missions take their services directly. The SRLMs has also identified and partnered with various partner organizations on their own based upon the requirement of their particular state. Now, how this NRLM supports the self-help groups in their growth and the financial inclusion and other types of development activities. They support to the self-help groups of poor in terms of knowledge, skills, funding, bank linkages, and interest subvention. If apart from this, if they have certain other interests, then also this NRLM supports these self-help groups. NRLM ensures that poor are provided with requisite knowledge and skills to the members, the leaders, and the bookkeepers of the self-help groups. Because mostly what we see in the villages where the people are not very skilled, they are not very literate also. So when it comes to doing some sort of business or some sort of financial activity, they face lots of challenges and the problem. So to sort out those challenges, NRLM help these self-help groups and enhance their capabilities to meet those needs so that they can work independently in long term. They also manage their institution. They enhance their credit absorption capacity and credit worthiness. They link these SHGs to the markets. They manage their existing livelihoods, etc. Now, what are the financial assistance they give to the community-based organization under this NRLM? The financial assistance in form of revolving fund, that is known as RF, vulnerability reduction fund, and the community investment fund. So these are the 3 types of funds that is given by NRLM to the community-based organizations or the CVO And NRLM does not provide any direct financial support to any individual. So under NRLM, they provide support only to the CBOs or the self-help groups at the grassroots level. There's no individual people who get any type of support from this NRLM. They have to be a part of any CBO or the self-help group in the community. The purpose of revolving fund is to strengthen their institutional and the financial management capacity and build a good credit history within the group. Unless until they have that type of empowerment, it's very difficult to uplift them and to make them financially independent. So this vulnerability reduction fund, it is used for addressing the vulnerabilities of the members like food security, health security, etc., for meeting the needs of the vulnerable persons in the village. Many times we see in the villages that when there is any health crisis or when there is a shortage of food and all, they don't have anywhere to go. So under NRLM, these type of vulnerabilities are addressed. And then there comes the community investment fund. Through the community investment fund, the federation, they give advance and loans to the self-help groups, and they undertake the common or the collective socio-economic activities if they want to do. If they want to do any income generation activity or any financial activity or economic activity or any social activity that can enhance their, which can enhance their or it can empower their status in the society, they can take up through this program. Now, other measures that is taken under an NRLM for their financial inclusion, the NRLM facilitates the self-help groups to open and operate bank accounts and the bank linkages. It also facilitates access to insurance to members. It is encouraging individual members to open bank accounts. In this, it encourages individual members in the sense that when they become financially empowered or they start some financial activity after taking loan or financial support under NRLM, then they are encouraged to open their bank account in their personal name so that they can deposit some money in their own account also, so that in near future when they need it, they can use it independently without any support from anyone. Now, there is a Ajivika skill development program under NRLM, and this Ajivika skills gives young people from poor communities an opportunity to upgrade their skills and enter the skilled force in growing sector of the economy. It includes the skill training and placement projects which are run in partnership with the public, private, or the non-government or the community organization. It trains the person who is between the age group of 18 to 35 years and who belong to a rural or very poor household, and they suffice being eligible for this for their selection under this skill and placement under this ASDP or the Ajivika skill development program, which is a part of this NRLM. Now, who are the PIAs or the project implementing agency under the NRLM? The PIAs are a very important and integral part of NRLM who can be a profit or not-for-profit registered entities who are identified by the Ajivika skill development program for skilling. They not only skill, but they place the identified youth in various sectors as per the interest of these youths. The youth identified under this program get skilled in wide range of trades, including IT as well as the soft skill. And after training, they are placed and the support is provided in terms of finding accommodation, opening a bank account when placed outside the home district, and counseling at the workplace. What earlier we used to see where the people, the youth were skilled, but after they were not, after skilling, they were left in the villages or in the community, and they never went for any job and all. So under this NRLM, provision was made that after training, they will be responsible. Yani, the PIAs will be responsible for the placement also. It's not only the training, and they will provide all sorts of support like accommodation, opening the bank account, and then counseling at the workplace, because retention is very important factor. When any any person who is from the village or from the community, if they go for job after the training and all, they staying there in the cities and different place at outside their house and the villages, it's very difficult for them. So counseling, time to time counseling and making them getting them adjusted to that particular place is very important. So it is the role of the PIA to do all these activities so that they can be retained and their skill will be used in better way. Apart from this, there is a self-employment component is also there in Ajivika. Ajivika is encouraging public sector banks to set up a rural self-employment training institute in all districts of the country on the lines of Rural Development Self-Employment Institute model for promoting the self-employment. This Rural Self-Employment Training Institute provides self-employment training and they link the candidates with bank loans for taking up self-employment. And this NRLM provides the cost of all training that has been done under this Rural Self-Employment Training Institute. Apart from this, there is one more thing, that is support to farm-based livelihood under NRLM. Here, there is another wing of NRLM that is known as Mahila Kisan Sashaktikarana Pariyojana, or it is known as MKSP, which is launched in the year 2010-11, and it is a special program for livelihood enhancement under the NRLM. And it is a concerted effort to recognize the role of women in agriculture, and an investment is being made to enhance their capacities and increase their income. The MKSP has two streams. One is agriculture and the other is agriculture that also include the livestock. And the other is the non-timber forest produce. Because as I say, in Jharkhand, this NRLM program has been implemented. So I see how this has been increased the income of the women. एंड झारखंड में, जैसा मैं आपको बता दूं कि झारखंड में ज्यादातर महिलाएं होती हैं जो कि हर तरह के काम में इन्वॉल्व होती हैं, चाहे वो एग्रीकल्चर हो, गाय पालना हो, मुर्गी पालना हो, बकरी पालना हो, या फिर जंगल जाके जंगल के सामानों को एकत्रित करके उन्हें बाजार में बेचना हो. सो दिस NRLM इज लाइक अ बिग सपोर्ट एंड a huge support for them to increase their income and as well as their family income to bring them out of the poverty. So this NRLM through this Mahila Kisan Sashaktikarana Pariyojana, they are helping these women to come out of their poverty by doing all sorts of agricultural activities and by providing a market for their forest produce, for their agricultural produce, for their livestock produce and all. And there is one brand I just want to add a little bit about, because I had the first-hand experience in Jharkhand. There is one brand that has been created by JSLPS, that is Jharkhand State Livelihood Promotion Society. And that brand is Palas. And through that brand, they have different outlets in different places where the products of these women were placed, and they are getting good income out of those things. And apart from this, they are doing all sorts of livestock rearing in their villages, and they are getting good income out of that. So this is all about NRLM and the SRLM. SRLM is the implementing agency of this National Rural Livelihood Mission program, and the state look after, and time to time they bring some changes according to their need of the community also. So this is the last slide, and the concluding slide I will say. Thus now we see how this NRLM and the SRLM are working towards the poverty elimination through social mobilization, institution building, financial inclusion, and a portfolio of sustainable livelihoods to reach its vision of each poor family should have an annual income of at least 50,000 rupees. So this is the mission and this is the vision they have under NRLM to make these poor people and women being the center of this program. And they form the self-help groups and they form the CBOs, and they under this NRLM program where you they get all sorts of support to for poverty elimination from the community and the villages and the rural area mostly. So this is all from my side. I think I'll conclude this with this. Thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask.
So I request students, if you have any queries or questions, please either write it on the chat box or just unmute yourself and speak. So I have one question actually, Padma.
Yes.
What are those financial jurisdictions as compared to states when we compare to NRLM? What is the maximum level how NRLM can support, and what are those projects which states are actually supporting?
Can you please repeat your question? I'm not getting it. Slowly, please.
I'm asking what are those levels and what is this jurisdiction of states for the supporting any of the projects?
Okay. Basically, the whole thing that has been implemented in the state is looked after by Jharkhand State Rural Development, JSLPS, it is known as. So they have different criteria for different criteria for different implementing different programs at grassroots level. So it can be NGOs, non-governmental organization. It can be the PIS. For example, I had a first-hand experience of the PIS as they implement the skill development program. So for different skills and for different trades, they have different PIS, and they have all sorts of different criteria, and they have to fulfill those criteria to get that type of support, the financial support or the project they can implement at grassroots level. Similarly, for different capacity building programs for enhancing the financial capacity of the communities, they, for the time to time, they bring out those requirements in the newspaper and all. So based on this need assessment, first they do the need assessment, what are the needs of the, because each state and even each block and each district has a different types of requirement. And that type of program that needs to be implemented over there. So from time to time, they give in the newspaper and all the type of partner they require. And then accordingly, the NGOs or the profit making organizations who can fit into all those criteria, they can apply for. And then there's nodal agencies, they identify few nodal agencies for implementing those things. So through those nodal agencies, the programs have been like implemented at the grassroots level. So most of the times we have to be very aware and being connected with the JSLPS to get all type of support, and if you want to be a part of this implementation program in this state.
Okay, one more question, of course, because interns are very much fresh and they might be not knowing how SHG is being formed. What is the minimum criteria, or how a student who is either completing her graduation or his graduation and wants to work with these rural ladies, how they can assist these ladies to form an SHG and work on to that?
Yeah, देखिए SHG के formulation, SHG can be formed minimum 10 to 20, as I said in the slide, the 10 to 20 women of any community, they can come together and they can form a group. But the basic criteria will be they have a register. They have to maintain a register where all the names of the women are written. They will conduct regular meetings. They will do regular savings. They will minute all the things they are doing. They will conduct regular interlending. Interlending in the sense ki if you'll submit like minimum amount they fix, this much amount should be submitted by each woman, maybe 10 rupees, 20 rupees, depends upon the financial condition of the women. Somewhere 100 rupees, but it can be minimum amount. It is fixed that every month these women or week or in 15 days, they will come and submit this much of amount. And then they do any women who wants to wants to have any take lend if they want to take money for any activity or for any household activity, they can take money from them and then they can return. And each SHG has a president, secretary, treasurer in place. They should have all office bearers, these are known as, in place, and they will conduct regular meeting and they minute all those things, and the signature of this office bearer should be there to authenticate that it is a running self-help group and they are doing the financial exchange, and the people and the person who is a committee member, they are taking money from the this self-help group, and they are returning also on time. It's a time bound return, and they're returning on time. Then that type of and they have a passbook, like they have to open their account in a nearby bank, and they deposit periodically. They have to deposit those money of this self-help group in the bank, and the interlending also should be done. So if a self-help group has a very healthy interlending, very healthy regular meetings, very healthy meeting minutes, so that time that self-help groups always qualify for any type of program, for any type of financial support, for any type of help from either from government or from the bank. So such self-help groups is considered as a healthy group.
Thank you, Padma Madam, for sharing that insights, because students are very fresh and they might be not knowing how SHGs are working and how they can actually support once they leave off their colleges and their universities. True. Because some of the students might be looking out for that, covering with SRLM and NRLM. It was wonderful insight how NRLM and SRLM are working. Today, I have taken all the three topics, which are actually task-based topics. Either you take the COVID-19 or SRLM, or the third session, which Arpita is going to take. All the three sessions were task-based activities. Thank you for sharing your insight. Thank you for being with us, taking your time and helping us around, helping our children, of course, to learn how they can actually support the society using this particular internship. I request IT team to please present a certificate of gratitude.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
To Padma Madam. Thanks for me. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for calling, and it's a privilege to be here. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. I think I should take a leave, Pradeep ji.
I do agree because you do have some other sessions too. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for calling once again.
Radhika, you can proceed for the next session for the third speaker. Radhika, are you there?
Sir, am I audible?
No, of course not. A little bit louder if you are there.
Just a second, sir. So now am I audible?
You are audible, but your voice is very low.
Just a second, sir. So now?
Yeah, Radhika, please proceed.
Sir, am I audible now?
You are audible.
Okay, sir. Mrs. Arpita Srivastav Rai is the PR and CSR head at Atmanirbhar Bharat on vocational learning. She is the director at Mindcube Multi-Services Private Limited and panelist of the International Glamour Project, Mrs. India 2020. She is the winner of Mrs. Congeniality in VG Mrs. India 2019. She is a social entrepreneur, CSR professional, and social worker, having 20 years of experience working with CXO levels for top corporate, social sector, and educational institutions. Council Member of Training and Development of Maharashtra, WICCI. She is the brand ambassador or jury at multiple organizations with a philosophy of life that is art of giving. A life of giving is the worth life living. Welcome, ma'am.
Thanks, Radhika, for that lovely introductions. A very good evening to all mentors, students, and my dear viewers. Well, I'm over here to present on a topic that is very closely associated with my work profile. And I think with all the work profiles who are into the CSR professionals and the social work. And thanks to Pradeep ji for choosing me to present this topic. So thanks, Pradeep ji, for giving me this topic. The credit goes to you, the convener of the Atmanirbhar Bharat, for that. Well, I will request the IT team to kindly present my presentation. So I go ahead. So students, are you geared up? I just need yes in the chat box to see where the you guys are listening to me or not. So I need action, guys. So please be a little proactive in my presentation. Thank you. Really blessed. Thanks a lot for showering that. Well, so as the topic goes, engage in diversity and difference. Remember one thing, diversity and difference hold distinct meaning for different interns that will open up opportunities for future work and involvement. For organizations looking to shape up their diversity and inclusion program and policies, the change can be challenging and rewarding. And that's how we have chosen this topic, to let you know the exposure of why it is important. Can you have a next slide, please? So as you know, as I said, the social work understands how diversity characterizes and shapes the human experience and is critical to the formation of the identity. The dimension of the diversity are understood as the intersection of multiple factors, including age, class, color, culture, disability, ethnicity, gender, gender identity, expression, migration, status, political ideology. You can understand so many spheres it covers. Can we go to the next slide, please? See, most of the companies enact change to deliver business values and vary in the diversity and inclusion thought process too. The research showing that companies with more diverse team outperforms those with a more homogeneous workplace. So what is the purpose? Why are we doing this? So the purpose is to strengthen social worker integration of global perspective and their practices, and it identifies cultural influences as social workers' understanding of presenting issues, assessment, and interventions with an intention to have an innovative results outcome. Why do you think it is important? I would like to cite an example on this. The reason why, that the technical industry still struggles with diversity and inclusion and often failing to attract diverse talent due to inclusivity issues in the workplace. So that's how it's important to address the issue. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what does it mean to engage in diversity? What is diversity? Engaging diversity means representing, appreciating, and valuing these differences. Recognizing equity in organizational life means that we have an understanding of the social power dynamics that are in play relative to the intersectional differences that human beings bring with them into the workplace. I tell you, anyway, why? See, in a country like India, where there exist multiple religions, it becomes difficult to avoid situations which carry embarrassment of some form or the other on religious practices. Not all embarrasses leads to conflicts or bitter feelings, but some may do that. So it's very important to understand, because in India, if you talk about the subject line with the engage in diversity, it talks about pluralism. Can we go to the next slide? So what is difference and diversity? What do you understand by the terminology? See, the core meaning of difference is that something is unlike something else in some way, as I said, due to the pluralism. And the core meaning of diversity is that there are many dissimilar, unlike forms, types, and ideas present in one area or the organization. You know, it reflects about individualism and the collectivism approach. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what are the general practice behavior that have an impact? So how do you engage in diversity and difference in practice? So the first I would like to reflect would be recognize Recognize the extent to which a culture, structure, and value may apprise, marginalize, eliminate, or create or enhance privilege and power. Why it is important, the reason why, in sense of the organization, if I would love to quote, would be that it established a sense of belongings for everyone. That is very required for every organization, because for each individual to bring their best self outcome, a sense of belonging must first be established. Having a connection to an organization or a group of people that make you feel you can be yourself not only result in greater engagement and creativity in the workplace, it is a psychological need. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach either. That's why it is so important to show best practices that can be open to trying new things. Now, how we go to the, can we go to the second slide? No, I'm sorry. Wait. So what's the framework? I was talking about the conceptualization framework. See, it is mostly about a approach. It is a competency-based approach. Now, what do you mean by this, a competency-based approach? See, it begins with a brief introductions of the ways in which social work, values, and ethics uniquely support diversity in practice, and follow by a review of the conceptual framework for diversity and biasness in social work practices. Is focused on standard competency, the importance of empathy and humility, and the various ways that individual and group are oppressed by the majority culture. It defines important concepts that play a role in engaging diversity in practice. So that's how we need to keep in mind. These are the important frameworks that drives the organization. So now the one can ask me, what are these competencies? What organization generally looks for the competencies? So here I would like to reflect the 9 social work competencies that a person should look into it. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what I said, it should be a professional identity, the first point. Then it should have a value in the ethics, need to have a critical thinking, diversity and difference, as we live in the country where all are welcome. Then social and economic justice, research, human behavior and the social environment, and social policy. Why do you think it is important for any of the organization to look into all these, important competencies? I tell you why. The research shows that even just the presence of physical diversity results in better performance. And for companies that are data-driven, that extra performance boost can be extremely motivating. It is also the fact that companies that lack diversity are being called out publicly and may even be losing business, not to mention falling behind when it comes to recruiting. You will be shocked to know, even Google, I'm going to quote that example also. Even Google in starting shows sign that they lack in diversity in affecting them. As per 2018, research from McKinsey shows greater diversity in the workforce results in greater profitability and value creation. So that's how for any organization, it's very important to focus on these competencies. Can we go to the next slide? So now, how do you engage in policy practice? How one can engage into it? Very simple. Analyze, formulate, advocate your policies that advance social well-being. and collaborate with colleagues and clients for effective policy action. Why it is important? Because we talk about holistic approach. We talk about to be the voice of the voiceless. So for the NGOs, it's very important to engage in all these practices. Can we go to the next slide? So what do you mean by learning? So I'm sure now with this, a small crux of highlighting, you would be clear that what I am going to tell you is what are the learning objectives behind this is to strengthen social worker cultural competencies, to develop knowledge of individualism, collectivism as one aspect of culture, and to access the influence of diversity and inclusion on social work practices, and to increase awareness and more inclusive ways of exploring. So in a nutshell, if I would say that what you think of by going to the entire slide presentation is engage in research-informed practice and practice-reform research. Apply knowledge of human behavior and social environment, and engage in policy practice to advance social and economic well-being and to deliver effective social work services and respond to contexts that shape practices. And I'm very happy to say that now organizations are really, focusing and doing measures that can, enhance the concept of diversity and inclusions. Like you have more empathetic leaders, in the organization, which plays a very important, to have a good leader, who drives, I think it's a very important for any organization. So, you need to have an empathetic leadership is the key to drive that. Now, what other thing that according to me, because I'm sharing this to my personal knowledge, is a top-down approach is not enough, okay? A top-down approach always compliance, there is no commitment to it. From senior leaders to frontline employees, every individual must see, understand their role and culture. That is very important. Now, the other thing that I would like to share through my experiences will be that inclusive is ongoing, not one-off training. This is very important that one needs to, because you will find a lot of trainings going on. One way to do this is to identify change coherence within the organization and outside of your organization in the management levels too, so that it equips them with the skills, informations to help them with the information and to act as champions change within their departments or in their working group. And how one can develop that is by having a very harmony relationship, by maximizing joy, connections, and minimizing fear. Because generally people have those tendencies of dominating, threatening a person. It should not be there, what I feel. And then the focus should be, forget the fit bracket, I totally agree, because most of the times I somehow feels that what the curriculum says, or maybe your biodata says, when it comes to the practicality, people generally fail to perform. So I strongly believe, forget fit and focus on helping individuals drive, your own dedication and passion towards your work. And once you are doing this in this NGO sector, I would request that have that feeling of yourself considering as brand, okay? Because if you take the ownership and think yourself as a brand, that drives you and kicks you. So can we go to the another slide? And I hereby add my personal reflections and relevant to this competency. So here I will be sharing my journey, that why it is important and one must think of it. Can I request IT to play a video of mine, please.
Just check up for the audio of this.
Sir, I'm unmuted only.
Fine, you play anyways. I will say that, no problem. I, being a change maker, wanted to leave a legacy behind. Legacy in the form of a successful social entrepreneur who are an asset to the society, a holistic being. I'm willingly wanted to embrace the responsibility to motivate and inspire people to give back to society. And I live by the principle of empathy and gratitude. And that's how. The first slide shows my standing as a social entrepreneur, where I am playing multiple roles in the society by catering to all the social sector. Now, the second slide shows about my involvement in the pageantry world, where the topic of engage in diversity and inclusion fits in. Because this is the platform where beauty in every form is celebrated. The true empowerment of the society is by promulgation of inclusion and acceptance. And I'm very happy and glad to say that the International Glamour Project is a pageant that cuts through society's stereotypical ideas of being a woman. It promotes inner glamour, glitz, and glory to our country by representing the Indian women on the international platform. And the best they have capitalized all our energies is by assigning us a social awareness project. Now, I would love to share with you the statistics that we are near about 150 participants, all pan-India and international. Now, every individual was given an assignment on the social awareness project, what they will love to bring to the viewers in their notice. And everyone, whether it is education, health, environment, you can pick up anything. And you will be shocked to know all the females picked up all the causes. You know, if you talk about environment, use of plastics, if you talk about green energy, ecosystem, in the health, if you talk about, it will be catering all malnutrition, because I generally talk about women-centric issues and I'm associated with that. So I thought of a malnutrition deficiency called an iron deficiency. That was my social awareness project. People have the general social awareness projects, some have taken cancer and, you know, all whatever the social causes you can assign with. But I tell you, what is the best thing that I come across through this social awareness journey was 1 in a million skin disorder, ichthyosis. I have never heard about it. So you ought to learn also. That is one of the rare skin conditions. And I'm very proud to say she's one of my fellow queens who herself is a victim of this disease, you know. Ichthyosis, you know, every day her skin peels out. And every day she has to cover herself. She cannot step out in the sunlight because her blood keeps on coming up. So, you know, I was not aware of that. So in this, you know, you ought to learn also many things that what are the sufferings of the people? And she anyways herself was a victim. We often come across about domestic violences and the victim of the acid. We all know all these things. But to me personally, ichthyosis was something very shocking. So the platform they built up was really good, where everyone keep on coming up with their issues they wanted to address. And the money that was raised in this crisis of the pandemic was awesome. It was somewhere around 78 lakhs. So you can understand, generally beauty pageants, people consider it to be a fashion fiesta kind of a thing, a showbiz industry where you just have to walk the ramp. So my dear students, the concept is changing, okay? We are in a world where we need to capitalize old resources and energies to show our talents. And these notions are, you know, keep it aside, you know, this is bad, this is wrong, or, you know, if you need to show yourself, if you need your voice to be heard, explore wherever you wish to. That I am sharing with my personal experiences. And never underestimate the power of an ordinary person. You know, I always say that. We often have that tendency of underestimating ourselves, right? So please don't do that. And once you have that competitive attitude of participating, that itself shows your engagement in diversity and interacting with different people, so difference in places. So if anyone has any question, can ask for, and hereby I stop my presentation. Pradeep ji, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, students, I must say, if you have some of the queries, how exactly the beauty pageant is working, or how exactly beauty pageant is supporting across globe, across countries, across nations, across cities, even the villages. So if you would like to really see, I request our IT team, there is one link I have shared to Radhika. Please, if you share that particular link, I can show you how exactly the diversity is and inclusion as per se for beauty pageant. Radhika, can you hear me?
Yes.
So let me share you that particular insight. Give me a minute. Can you see my this thing slide desktop?
Yes, we can.
Yes, sir.
So students, this is what the Dream and Believe Foundation is working, and see how they are working. The money they have raised, the fundraisers they have raised, the donors they have, and what exactly they are doing. It's not only what they are doing is they are working for healthcare, they are working for education empowerment, they are working for environment, and they are fighting for fighting with the cancer, COVID-19 support they are raising. They are working for maternal and newborn health. They are working for the blind. So why I am sharing this here to you all? Because it's not only that beauty pageant is working only for making the pageantry awards or so. If you see on the board how the beauty pageantry is working since last international students, they are being associated with certificate of recognition. They are giving to all the supporters who are raising. They are working with the children, distributing books and stationery, distributing masks and goodies to others. So why it's been actually shared here is, see how in education field they are working. This is what for child education they are working. They are working for gender equality. They are working for pregnancy awareness. So it's not always that making women independent financially. So it's not always that we are talking about only the beauty pageantries. And that is what we have an assumption that beauty pageantry is not at all working for the social cause. It's not like such. So that is why I said, and that is why I asked Arpita ji to actually once the learning outcome whenever we are talking about the equality, whenever we are talking about the diversity and inclusion. Somehow, some various organizations are working, but we are not into knowledge of this, that how exactly those organizations are working. We have taken the case study of beauty pageantry because Arpita ji is into that. She had been into Mrs. India previously also in 2018. Since 2019 to 2020, she is actually finalist of International Ghana project. So this is just a case study, but of course this case study itself is relevant that they are working for each of the things. They are working for the racism, they are working for the LGBT, they are working for the farmers, they are working for the single mothers. So it's like such that the inclusion which we are talking about, Dream and Believe Foundation is working, the beauty pageantries are working. So I'm staring here, stopping here this particular website and say the sharing. But this is how the system is working. This is how our people and other organizations are working. It's not only this organization is working across India, across globe. So many organizations are working like such. Once they are talking about the gender inclusion, once they are talking about the diversity, once they are talking about the caring of the people, exactly the same thing is happening. And that is why we took today the more of the sessions which are focused toward the task-based activities. That is what COVID-19 task force is. That is what NRLM, SRLM is talking about, and that is what Arpita ji's session was actually talking about. So thank you, Arpita ji. Thanks for taking these sessions. Thanks for inviting all the students. Now I request my IT team to present certificate of gratitude to our honorable speaker. Thanks, Arpita ji. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for enlightening all the students. And students, those who are with us, please let us know your queries about those things. Let us know you all are sharing. You can share whatever the insights about today's session or the previous sessions, because we are now into the 5th weekend. And why we took this particular diversification, inclusion and all, because your 5th and the final assignment is based on this. So once now you are having the insight about the diversity, that is why I took that Dream and Believe Foundation for the same. And our 4th assignment, which will be later on, I will be sharing it to you on Monday. That is based on this diversity only. So thanks, not taking much of the time. As the ritual says, the presenter of the day, that is Arpita ji, needs to actually close the session. And by the time I request all our interns to switch on their videos. Although she is our guest, but she is a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat, always has to be, because she is only the leading PR and CSR for Atmanirbhar Bharat. So I request Arpita ji to close the session and request all the IT team, all the members, all the speakers, all the mentors, and of course, all the students to switch on the video so that we can have the pics. Thank you. Arpita ji, over to you then.
Thanks, Pradeep ji. Well, dear students and mentors, I will love to hear your comments on the presentation as the task was given to me. So you are the judges and I am at the back. I am at your place and you are at my place, okay? So please do drop your comments and the questions and ask, right? As well as you go to ask, that shows your involvement that yes, you are really serious about the thought process, right? And even in a way, I will also come to know where my flaws are, okay? So please be expressive, because I want my students to be expressive with me, because that's how it shows the relationship and bond among us. So my humble request to you all, right? I'm sure you're not going to disappoint me, right? Have thumbs ups. Can I have thumbs ups from everyone? Raise your hand or thumbs up, say something. Oh, thanks, Divya. You are the first one to do that, right?
You know, Divya is the very first member, always she's joining.
I know. I appreciate her. Thanks, Neharika. So, you know, I love those people, you know. I must say thanks to Narmada ji. Thanks, Neha. That shows you, you know, that shares very positive energies that fine. I am interacting to people who are really serious about knowing me, listening me, and, you know, the hard work that we put in. Thanks, Priyanka, for you all guys to make you understand. So with that, we are anyways meeting tomorrow with the other session. See you there. Thanks, Lavina. Thanks a lot. And till then, ask, I would say, because I don't want my students to be like a mutant spectators all the time. Thanks, Om, for acknowledging. And please be expressive. Thanks, Kabir. Thanks a lot. Till then, stay safe, be happy. Don't be dull with faces, okay? I need smiling faces, because all the time when I see the pics to be uploaded, all are with their drooping faces. Please, yaar, don't be with their drooping faces. Neha, I want you to smile, okay? Not to be so serious about it. Neha Sharma, I can see her. She's so serious. Thanks, Jinal.
Okay, so thanks to all. Stay happy, stay healthy. It's in COVID time, so take precautions as for those. Thank you to all, and I'm switching off for the day. Thanks to mentors.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the students. Thank you.
Thank you.